Welcome to The Real with Joseph Labman. I am Joseph Labman. Thank you for tuning in this episode of The Real, taking time out of your day to come watch this episode. I really appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe for me. I'd really appreciate that as well. That's the best way you can support this channel and help me grow my content and grow this channel to where I'd like it to be. Everybody hit the like button for me on the way in on this video today. That also helps promote this video more in the algorithms, helps grow this channel more as well. Please share this content. I would really appreciate that. My guests would as well. If you would please share this episode with someone you know that maybe is interested in the topic we're talking about today. Please leave a comment below as well. We'd love to hear your guys' feedback. You can interact with myself and the guest on the panel and the live chat as well. Whatever we're talking about, just leave a comment there in the live chat. Pop in and say hello. We'll put it on the screen for you. And yeah, without further ado, let's get to the show. Welcome back to The Real with Joseph Labman. I am Joseph Labman. Hope you guys are having a great week. It is officially game week. We are back. Browns football is this Sunday. The NFL is back this week. We just had college football kick off this past weekend. My Buckeyes got the win over Texas. Go Bucks. Great weekend. High school football in Ohio kicked off 2 weeks ago. So football is back in full swing this week, starting Thursday night, all the way till February. We'll have football every weekend. And so great weekend. Again, shout out to my Bucks. Go Bucks for getting the win. If you're new here, please like, subscribe, and share because we're going to be going doing lives and recovering and reacting to the Browns all season long like we have been for the past 3 years. This year, I think will be one of our best seasons, the best season we've had so far. I think we're definitely have figured out a lot more new things now we want to add to the show and add to the games each week. And I think you guys really enjoy it. So stay tuned for that. Like, subscribe, and share. Shout out to Mike, professional fan. He'll be live this week as well in the TPF over in the Professional Fan Show. So go check him out. And so let's get right to it. And so obviously we got the Browns this week playing the Cincinnati Bengals at home. And there's a lot of talk. We could talk a lot about that game and, what is Joe Flacco going to look like? What are the Browns going to look like? All that stuff. But there's a bigger headline to me outside of football, off the field, that I think is going to really be a shadow on the team the whole year, or the elephant in the room rather. And if you watched Ohio State versus Texas Saturday, you might have saw on Twitter what happened before the game, and that was Arch Manning. Not Arch Manning. That was Jimmy Haslam and Jimmy Haslam and Andrew Berry watching Arch Manning in person. And you can see by the headline today, it says on my show, what's Shedeur's purpose in Cleveland? Because what am I saying about this? I'm going to break all this down today, piece by piece, of what I think is truly going on with Shedeur Sanders and why were they at the game? All right. And so not only were they at that game Saturday, they were also at the LSU Clemson game with Garrett Nussmeier, a 2026 NFL draft prospect, Kate Klubnik, a 2026 NFL draft prospect for Clemson. And then I believe they stopped by at South Carolina as well and saw Lenore Sellers, a 2026 draft prospect. And oh, by the way, at the Ohio State game with Arch Manning, who could declare to come out in the draft in 2026, quarterback as well, as we all know. Kevin Stefanski was also in attendance. That's the first time we've seen Uncle Kev publicly at a game scouting with the front office and owner. And so Saturday was a big day for Browns football and Browns media and the headlines. There was a lot that came out of that game. Not only what happened on the field, we could talk about the game itself with Ohio State, Texas, but in terms of Cleveland Browns side of things, that was, to me, the biggest headline from that day in terms of the NFL, because you have an owner who a couple weeks ago, we all saw the clips, I'm going to play it again here in a minute, was a couple months ago saying, how Arch Manning was going to be the guy he has a big thirst for, and we know his connections with the Manning family through Tennessee, and then they're at the game Saturday, right? But then you're the team that just drafted 2 quarterbacks. You took Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round, you took Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round, and I think a lot of people believe that Dillon Gabriel, by what they've been saying as well, he's obviously been ahead of Shedeur on the depth chart, on their depth chart, all camp long, all preseason long, going into the season. They just traded Kenny Pickett. Dillon's going to be their backup now. I've said all along, I think Dillon's going to be their long-term backup, right? But what does that mean for Shedeur Sanders? What's Shedeur's purpose in all this? Why is he here in Cleveland still? Does he really is he actually ever going to have a shot to be the franchise guy here? Would ever even start? What's the point of having him here? And so let's start here with that. Let's start with Shedeur's purpose here in Cleveland. And I've said all along, I think the only reason why I think Jimmy Haslam took Shedeur Sanders, to me, was more of just financially. And I say and I know Jimmy Haslam came out and said that, we let Andrew Berry make the pick. And, Friday night we took Dylan. We did not think we were going to take another quarterback, but, we talked about it Saturday morning and blah, 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 and all this. I said I don't buy any of that. I think it was good PR by Haslam. I think, to me, Jimmy Haslam, when you listen to what he said that, when he was asked the question at the press conference too, he said, when we got the right people in the room that Saturday morning, we discussed and talked about it. Well, who were those right people in the room? And really, it was just him. It's what he wanted. And I think, did he force it technically upon Andrew Berry's hand to take Shedeur? No, but I think he also made it known, like, hey, this is who I want. Like, make it happen. Andrew's not going to tell his boss no. And when you saw Andrew Berry's reaction to the pick, and Kevin's to a degree, mainly Berry, was not a guy that looked excited about the draft pick at all. He looked like a guy who girlfriend just broke up with him, or lost his dog, or, just like life was not well. He did not look like a guy that was thrilled to draft Shedeur Sanders. And so, again, I think Jimmy Haslam, that was his guy. He wanted Shedeur. Now, why did he truly want Shedeur? I think it could one say, hey, maybe it's a 5th round flyer. Maybe he could be something here. He has some potential. Maybe could he be our guy? Could he pan out to be that guy if we get him in here? Maybe we luck and find in the guy. Yeah, possibly. But I think a lot of the reason, though, like I said all along, was off the field financially. And I think a lot of these NFL owners, a lot of these owners in all sports, saw what happened with Bronny James in LA. And obviously, Bronny James is a lesser prospect, a lesser skilled, talented player in his sport than Shedeur Sanders by a lot. And I think I would even say less popular than Shedeur. And Bronny's a big name because he's LeBron James' son, but Shedeur, to me, is his own brand, bigger brand, and just much more popular and a bigger following by a lot. That, when they saw Jeannie Buss take Bronny James in that draft, it wasn't just to please LeBron, but also for her financially. It was to get one more bag on the way out the door, because she, when you're going to sell an NBA franchise or any franchise, that she didn't just think about that during the season. That's something that was in the works for a while. At least she was in the back of her mind. It was something that she knew eventually I'm going to sell the team. And that's a process for a lot of times years, a couple of years, maybe at least months. And so when she took Bronny James by Christmas, right before Christmas it was, and Bronny only played about 2 games that year. It wasn't a big, wasn't even in the rotation for the Lakers. He already generated $50 million in revenue for the Lakers. I mean, $50 million off a 55th overall pick. And so I think a lot of these owners, when they saw this draft coming up, this past draft, when they got Shedeur Sanders, who's a much bigger prospect, he's a quarterback, better in his own sport and a bigger brand, I think it's clear that what we've seen, what a lot of teams thought about him, that they passed on him. They didn't think he was franchise worthy. But somebody to take a guy like that in the 5th round when they already took another quarterback in Dylan Gabriel, to me, it's only other one way, is because, hey, you know what? I can, get some money off of that. And so, I mean, you don't believe me, Shedeur's people, they already know what's going on. Shedeur's camp is telling you. Remember Uncle Neely from the pregame show? Shout out to them. Great content. This was about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, on his show. And this show, on this day, he came out and said, trade Shedeur Sanders to the New Orleans Saints. Why not call the Saints? And let's listen to what he has to say here. And when I listen to this again today, again, he's obviously very, very close to the Sanders family. He's with them every day, works in the building every day in Colorado. He knows what's going on. They know what's going on. They know why Shedeur's really in Cleveland. And it's not really a whole lot to do with the what's going on in the football field. And so let's listen to Uncle Neely here.
The CU fan base.
Hey, man, it just makes sense, man. If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. You gotta do what makes sense in this industry. These are popular guys, not just in Colorado, but nationally. Shedeur still has the highest selling jersey taking place right now. I think he went over 250 million. So in his pockets, that's about 14 or 15 million when they do the breakout between the player, the league, and the team. Pockets ain't hurting, that's for certain. Hey, Chico, I don't know if you saw my Facebook post last night, man.
Oh, I think I did.
I tagged New Orleans Saints in it and Shedeur, and I said, Saints,
Great post.
Called the Cleveland Browns, which I tagged in it, and said, man, make them offers of Shedeur. Yeah.
And
You got
said
a
make them,
first.
what'd you say? Make them a real offer.
Make them a
legit
real offer. Yeah,
Yeah.
legit offer. Yeah, don't come in here playing around now, because
Mhm.
yeah, like I understand, like we talked about in the show before. I understand why he's 4 on the depth chart. That's where he was drafted.
Right.
And there has not been enough camp or failures by the 2 guys drafted ahead of him to shift the order. I understand that. But when you start getting into preseason games or the start of the season and your QB room is lackluster because you had some injuries or some guys retire, whatever the case may be, here the Cleveland Browns got a guy, a generational talent listed at 4th, sitting there. Man, y'all crazy. I'm talking about all the other teams that need a quarterback. They picked up the phone and said, all right, Cleveland, we got it. What you want?
Exactly.
And so you hear what Uncle Neely said there. And again, that's somebody who's in the Sanders camp, knows what's going on, what they think, and right, it's pretty obvious how close he is to them, obviously. And so for him to come out and say that a month ago, 3-4 weeks ago, they know what's going on. They're not stupid. They've been around the industry for a long time. They've been around the NFL for a long time. They understand the business of football. I think Dion knows that better than just about anybody. Like, they know what these owners are thinking. They know what Jimmy Haslam's thinking. Again, actions speak louder than words. And like he said there, Shedeur is still 4th on the depth chart, even after the Carolina game, even after Kenny Pickett not playing at all. And you saw what they thought about, again, actions speak louder than words. You saw what they thought about Kenny Pickett. They moved him up out of here. But Shedeur was still 4th on the depth chart all along, even under Kenny Pickett. And so, again, to me, Shedeur's whole reason for being here is only financially, and it's all the owner. The owner wants him here financially. And why, if he's their long-term guy, if he even had a shot, and I've said this all along, number one, let's go back to the preseason game against the Rams. Why wouldn't, if he was going to be your long-term guy, if you thought he had if you legitimately thought he could be your long-term guy here in Cleveland, why wouldn't you put him in the drive in the last 2 minutes there at the end of the game and go win on the game-winning drive? Why not give him that opportunity to feel that in an NFL game? Why would you sit him out? He just played a whole half, took a bunch of hits, got sacked, I think 5 times that game. You can't say it was the oblique after the beating he took all game. And he was running around the field. Remember scrambled 20 yards backwards and took a sack. I mean, he looked fine from the injury with the oblique. So you can't say it was we wanted to rest him for 2 minutes because we were, we had him on a time clock of how much he can play. No, he's not really their guy. If he was really their guy, you put him out there in the last 2 minutes of a game, because why wouldn't you give a rookie quarterback in a preseason game that opportunity to go see what he can do? You knew you were going to cut Tyler Huntley all along. It didn't make any sense to put him in there. But again, he's not really their guy. He's only here for financial reasons. It's a financial grab. And so $250 million, and the guy only played 1 preseason game, that's a lot of money. That number's probably gone up. Who knows what it's at now? Because he's got a big following. And you saw he only gets $14-15 million out, or $14 to $15 million out of that 250. The others divvy up between ownership, their team, and the NFL. That's a lot of money for one guy. And so not many guys are generating that kind of revenue as a rookie. And so, and another reason where they told you on draft night before they took Shedeur Sanders, he wasn't their guy. When they traded away Travis Hunter in the number 2 pick to go get not only Mason Graham, but to go get a first-round pick for 2026 draft when they already have one. Why would you do that? Number one, if Shedeur was your guy, again, you would have took Travis Hunter, just like when the Bengals drafted Joe Burrow. He was their guy. They went out and got who when they had a whole lot of holes in their team. Could have took an offensive lineman to protect Joe Burrow. Could have took a defensive end or whatever they needed. They went out and got Jamar Chase because he was his college teammate and a big time weapon. Well, Travis Hunter's a big time weapon and was Shedeur's college teammate. They're very close, but you passed on him because again, it's all about the biggest part of that trade was that first round pick next year's draft, in 2026. That was really the biggest piece that Jimmy Haslam saw in that trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars draft night was that pick. Because again, it's all about the 2026 draft. Shedeur's really not their guy. They're not invested in the Shedeur long term. I think it's a money thing. I think it's also another way, it's going to keep fans engaged all year. They brought back Joe Flacco because it's a way to tell the locker room, hey, we're trying to win. right? We're trying to win this year, even though we're looking at quarterbacks next year. And then for the fans, we'll draft Shedeur Sanders. So when we get to, I don't know, around Thanksgiving and teams out of the playoffs, not that good. So we don't have this. So we don't have the abysmal ending like we had last year where we're unwatchable. Hey, let's go out and let's put Shedeur Sanders out there. We get some TV gains flex, get some revenue off of that. It's interesting, gets fans engaged. People will be talking about it, right? It keeps the season afloat in terms of just headlines and keeping them, somewhat of the morale somewhat interesting and high, because Shedeur, whenever he gets put out there, it's going to be interesting. People are going to be fascinated by it. Like I said, I wouldn't be down if the game got flexed on TV nationally, especially later in the year, and they flex games all the time. That's all I think it is. That's all it's been all along for $250 million that they've already generated off this guy. It's not about the long. They don't care about Shedeur long term here, and I've been saying that all along. And so when I saw them on the sideline, going back to that now, on Saturday, them standing there on the sideline for Ohio State and Texas with Arch Manning out there, and to me, it just cemented that. And they've been they're telling you, and Jimmy Haslam has a history of telling you what he wants, and it happens. And I'm going to show you some examples of that today. But again, they've been telling you about Arch Manning all along. We go back to, was it right before training camp? What a coincidence too. Right before training camp, they came out and said this. And right before the season kicked off, fans were excited. What's this year going to be like? Can the Browns make the playoffs? Can Flacco? No, they came out and told you this right off the bat through two different sources, a local media guy and a national media guy. And this stuff didn't come out of thin air. When multiple people are saying this, it's coming from somewhere. It's not just coming out of nowhere. And so, again, Tony Rizzo, one of the most popular radio guys here in Cleveland for many, many years, spoke to a billionaire that knows Jimmy Haslam very well. And here's what he reported on July 21st. 2 months now. Damn, we're already in September. July 21st, 2025.
I know he would not admit it. And I know it's nothing that they want to talk about. But I'm telling you, the thirst that Jimmy Haslam has for Arch Manning is unmatched. Unmatched. You know the connection that Haslam's donated a ton of money to Tennessee. They have a relationship with Manning family. I don't think it's a coincidence they acquired a second first-round pick. I don't know whether this kid's coming out or not. It was described to me by a billionaire that said, in a perfect world, that guy would be in Cleveland next year.
Yeah.
And they would do anything to get him.
Doesn't that excite you? It does me.
And you hear what he said there. They would do anything to get him. Well, going out and getting an additional first-round pick in next year's draft after trading off Travis Hunter, who a lot of people thought was a generational talent, that's doing anything to make sure you have an insurance, more, I'm not saying insurance, but more arsenal to acquire him, right? If you have to possibly make a trade in draft night or whatever you had to do. They're just like what he just said. They're not just telling you, their actions are telling you what he just reported. They're at the game Saturday. They traded away Travis Hunter for additional first next year. He's hearing it from people that know Jimmy Haslam very well. And then the very next day, now that's a local report, although it is ESPN Cleveland, but Colin Cowherd, national guy, what he reported the next day. And we all remember this. Let's take a listen again.
It is not. In fact, this is the worst kept secret in the South. Haslam, Jimmy, owner of the Browns, huge SEC Tennessee booster, leans heavily on the Manning family. Very close to the Manning family. Yes, that's not make-believe. Arch Manning is part of the Manning family, and this is where Nick Saban comes in. Saban is incredibly close to not only Jimmy Haslam, but Saban's close to the Manning family as well. And so Saban, if he could land, I'm told, a top quarterback like Harbaugh going to the Chargers for Herbert, he would take a phone call for the NFL. And there are two teams guaranteed to be awful this year in the NFL. Cleveland and the Saints. Nick Saban has coached in Cleveland with the Browns under the Belichick staff, and he coached at LSU. This is not a conspiracy theory. Haslam's circle of trust, according to an article in The Athletic last year, is the Manning family and Jimmy Sexton and Bill Parcells. Sexton is Nick Saban's agent. So the Mannings are royalty in New Orleans. The Children's Hospital in New Orleans is called the Mannings Children's Hospital. And the Mannings are royalty to Jimmy Haslam. Jimmy Haslam also loves headlines. That's why he pushed to draft Johnny Manziel and Baker Mayfield. They were the most talked about quarterbacks. It's why he signed a ridiculous guaranteed contract for Deshaun Watson. It would get discussed. So this is not a conspiracy theory. Okay. The circle of trust for Jimmy Haslam is the Manning family and Jimmy Sexton. Saban's, Manning, Haslam, South. That's why I've said. And there's two teams in this league that are going to be bad. The Saints are going to be bad, and the Browns are going to be bad. Now, that doesn't mean Saban, if he doesn't take the job, it's all lost for Cleveland. Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry, the GM, more than capable. But this story is a poorly kept secret. The Mannings, Haslam, Jimmy Sexton, Nick Saban. That's why I ran with that thing last week. Lane Kiffin talked about it. Greg McElroy. Saban's not going to college. He would take a call in the.
And so that's that. When we remember that report from last year, or not last year. I'm sorry. I got some notes on my plate from last year. I got my notes queued up. But again, we remember that from a couple months ago. And that was right before training camp. And so they're telling you nationally, locally, what they're going to do and what they're thinking, without a doubt. And so, he mentioned some other names there. He mentioned Jimmy Sexton, how Jimmy Sexton and the Manning family are part of Haslam's inner circle, right? And not only is Jimmy Sexton, Jimmy Sexton represents not only the Mannings, but he also, or is close to the Mannings, but also represents Nick Saban. He brought up Nick Saban a lot during that. I don't buy the Nick Saban stuff. Again, Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski were with Jimmy Haslam down in Columbus on Saturday. I don't buy the Nick Saban stuff personally. I don't think Jimmy Haslam's looking to get rid of Andrew Berry or Kevin Stefanski for that matter. Definitely not Kevin Stefanski. Kevin Stefanski is represented by Jimmy Sexton. So they're all in the same circle. He also mentioned there Bill Parcells. Well, Bill Parcells was an idol to somebody who's actually, this is what I was pulling up on the side. Let me get it right here. You guys remember Bob Quinn? Bob Quinn used to be the GM of the Lions back in the day. Well, Bob Quinn right now, if you go on Wikipedia and you just go on the Browns.com, he's right there, executive who was the senior personnel and coaching executive for the Cleveland Browns. And again, his relationship with Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells was an idol of Bob Quinn. Obviously, Bob Quinn also came from the Belichick tree. They're all connected, right? It's one big connection. And so Kevin Stefanski, in my opinion, will not be getting fired. I think Kevin Stefanski's in the loop. Again, he has the same agent, Jimmy Sexton, as Arch Manning, or not Arch Manning, as the Mannings and all the stuff Colin Cowherd pointed out there. And so they're on the sideline of the game. They're telling you who their guy is. You heard what Tony Rizzo said about Arch Manning, the report he's hearing with Haslam's thirst for him. They'll do whatever it takes. And then you hear what Colin Cowherd just said, right? And that was the week right before training camp. Those reports came out. So here we are a week before the first game of the season. And what are they doing? They're down at Arch Manning's game in Columbus, watching him and making it public and making it known. They didn't care. They knew people were going to be sitting there watching them Saturday. They didn't care. And so they're telling you, their actions are speaking louder than their words. They're telling you what they're going to do. And Shedeur Sanders is not the future he's not in the future plans here in Cleveland. Dylan Gabriel's viewed as probably the long-term backup. That's what he is. And that's that. They're telling you. And so, and I get Arch Manning did not play great Saturday. I thought he looked a little better in the fourth quarter. Overall, for a first start, I thought he looked like a guy playing in his first college game in a big-time game against the defending national champions. Give a lot of credit to Matt Patricia. Him with Ohio State's going to be a hell of a match. They're going to give any quarterback a hell of a time all year because the stuff he was doing up front in that game with that defense, they were running NFL stunts up there, doing delayed blitzes, all kinds of stuff. They had Arch Manning seeing ghost all game. And so, Was it a great game from Arch? No. But do I think Arch will be better as the season goes on? Yes. Just like I thought when Shedeur had his 2 first preseason games, one was really good, the next one wasn't really good, right? But does that mean he's a butt? Does that mean he can't be good? No. I think both of them are kind of in the same boat. They're both come from very high-profile families, right? They're under the public eye. I think both probably got a little overhyped because of their names, right? It sells. When you see Sanders, it sells. When you see Manning, it sells. It's intrigue, right? That's all it is. And so, again, I don't blame them for their play. I get people say, well, Arch Manning's a bust because he didn't play well Saturday against Ohio State. That's not true. Just because the guy didn't play well in one game doesn't mean he's not going to be a draft. You don't judge a guy off of one game. No scout or GM or owner or coach with a sane mind operates by that. Unless he went out there and threw 10 interceptions, he's not off their board. They're just fine. Again, he played better in the second half. Again, just like what I said with Shedeur. Yeah, he didn't play well in the Rams game. He played really well in the Carolina game. But I think where Shedeur's at in all this now is I think this year of sitting all year, and he'll probably play at the end of the year, I think will help him in his development because sitting and learning does help you. I mean, there was a guy today on Gil's Arena. He just launched a football show, the former NFL player. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he said this today on the show that Shedeur's actually going to benefit from sitting behind Flacco. Let Flacco go out there and deal with all this stuff early on in the season, right? Let Shedeur sit and learn and develop, you know what I mean? And then wherever Shedeur goes next, he'll be ready to possibly go in there and really compete for that starting job. And so, but again, I don't think that's going to be here in Cleveland. And so, to me, again, his real purpose here in Cleveland the whole time was mainly for financial reasons for Haslam. To me, that's all it is. Again, $250 million. Well, how much did he pay Deshaun Watson? Oh, it was like $235 million. So, and if you remember, Shedeur gets $15 million of that. So, that's probably gone up too. Hasn't damn near made off the Deshaun contract off of Shedeur Sanders already before the season's even started. So he's already paid that off. And he can put that money in other places too. He's got a stadium he's got to build, right? Owners think, a lot of these owners, most owners, all of them, they think business first. They're billionaires. This is just a hobby to them, right? This is owning an NFL franchise, just a hobby to them. And so, he said, yep, good to see you, Mr. 3000. He said Shedeur and Flacco are pretty much the same quarterback when you think about it. I mean, Flacco and Shedeur, they're not the long-term guy here in Cleveland. Flacco's obviously 40, so he's on the way out the door anyways. But, yeah, if it's that case, yeah, Baker had one bad season while we let him go. I'm going to get to that in a minute, Humble. I'll get to that in a minute. Brian Snyder, what's up, Snidetown? Good to see you. Lil Joe, tell your dad Snyder said hi. I will, Snyder. Hope you're doing well. Shout out to my Aunt Jill. She said, Snyder. Good to see you, Aunt Jill. Love you. Don't forget to hit the like button, everybody on the way in here. Absolutely. What the hell was up with Manning's sidearm throwing? Where did that come from? That was atrocious. Yeah, again, Mr. 2000, I agree with you. There was a lot of things I saw from Arch Manning on Saturday I wasn't impressed with. I thought mechanically he didn't look good. I think he has a long way to go still in terms of some of his mechanics and just development as a quarterback. I'm not sure if we'll see how he looks at the end of the year. I think he can turn it around. I don't think he's going to be, I wouldn't rate him. I wouldn't say he's good or bad after one game, especially against in that atmosphere and that kind of game against that defense and Matt Patricia. And that's a tough ask for any first-time starter or any quarterback, really. I think whoever Ohio State plays this year, whether it's Drew Aller or Arch Manning, whoever it's going to be, they should give teams hell with that. What they were doing on Saturday, they should give teams hell with the personnel they have up front. And really that whole defense, they're going to be a problem for everybody. But I was not impressed with a lot of his mechanics, some of the development. And then I go watch, if you go watch a lot of Arch Manning's high school highlight tape, some of the competition he was playing against wasn't great. Like, it was kind of like, you're kind of thinking why he's no wonder why he looked great. He's out here playing against a bunch of guys that really weren't getting any offers from any school. I mean, they were just average guys out there playing high school football. But I think the kid does have talent. He has raw talent, size, ability, everything, right? I think the upside's there. I think obviously I was not impressed with mechanics, which I was kind of surprised by considering who his uncles and his dad is. But maybe could that a lot of that just been in his head? Yeah, possibly. So let's see how he looks by midseason, and then obviously by the end of the year. I think the more he settles down, I think he'll start to play a lot better. Now, he did make some hell of a throws at the end of that game. The one throw he threw between the corner and the safety, that was a hell of a throw. That was an NFL throw. There's guys in the NFL that can't make that throw. But, again, let's see how he looks to then. And, again, I want to see how Shedeur looks, too, at the end of the year. What if Shedeur comes out and plays really well, and maybe the Browns – what if he plays the last 5 games of the season? The Browns go 4-1. He looks really good. What does Haslam think then? But I don't think he'll think anything different because, now I'm going to move on to my next point. Jimmy Haslam's history, whatever he wants something and he signals to you publicly for a while what he wants, it happens eventually. Like, he's already made up his mind. That's what he wants. We keep saying $250 million jersey sales, but that's definitely had to have one up now that's it. But I think a month since that's been reported. So, yeah, I agree with you, Mr. 3000. Yeah, without a doubt. That's definitely gone up. I mean, that was 3-4 weeks ago, Mr. 3000. That's probably got to be, I think, was that before or after the Carolina game? I might have been, let me double check that. I still got it on my thing up here. I think that was before the Carolina game, maybe, or was it after? I think it was after. No, it was before. So, yeah, I think. Let me double check that real quick. Again, I think if that was before, August 7th was the day Uncle Neely put out that video live. I just want to get my dates right here, so I'm not mixing it up, right? Because if it was after that Carolina game, that number, I could imagine what that number is now. Okay, yeah, that was the day before. That was the day right before the Carolina game. So, yeah, that was 250 before he even took a snap in the NFL in the preseason. So that number now is probably – because I'll tell you one thing, Mr. 3000. That game was what, a Friday night? I was at a Dick's Sporting Goods at a very popular place down in Canton, Ohio, in Northeast Ohio here, right outside the Hall of Fame, down in Belleville Village, big, very popular place, big Dick's Sporting Goods down there is huge. They got everything in there you could think of. There was only a very few amount of Shedeur jerseys left on that shelves after that game. And I literally saw 2 people while I was there in the section. I was in the Browns section for probably about 10 minutes looking around. I saw about 2 to 3 people walk over there and pick up the Shedeur shirt with his face on it and stuff and buy it in a 10-minute span. 2 to 3 people. And that was the Sunday right after. And I saw it with my own eyes. And there wasn't many jerseys left on the shelves either. And people were buying them. And so that number now is probably over 300 million, I would assume. Because after that Carolina game, even a lot of Browns fans were going nuts and buying stuff. And so, again, Haslam, from a financial standpoint, it was a gold ticket. Just like this pen, this gold pen here, shiny and gold. When he saw Shedeur Sanders sitting there in the 5th round, and he remembered Bronny James from last year with the Lakers made off of him, and this guy's a much bigger brand, he saw that gold right there. And he said, that's a golden ticket financially. And he paid off the Watson contract already through Shedeur. He's probably got some extra money he can use towards that stadium he's got to pay for here in the next 4 or 5 years. Was it 4 years? Yeah, 4 years, 2029 when they try to get it launched up. So that's all it was. But, to not put the guy out there in the last 2 minutes of that game, preseason game, to let him, if he was really a guy you thought could be your long-term option, you would have put him out there to give him a shot and put him in that situation to get him that experience. Tyler Huntley, putting him out there did nothing for you. You knew you were going to cut him the next day anyway. So what was the point? Because he's not really your guy. And so, and I think, me personally, if Shedeur went down there and won that game in that 2-minute drive, as bad as he played that day, he didn't have a great game. And yeah, and I get the whole unit. I did the film breakdown. The whole unit didn't look good. The offensive line was terrible, but nobody on that unit in that second half played well that day. Shedeur didn't play well. Nobody played well. But if he would have went down there and won that game in spite of, the headlines would have been nuts. I mean, they would have been all over the internet, crowning. I mean, it would have been unbelievable. And that's more headlines going into the season. And that's more, well, he's got to get more reps. He's got to get more reps. Just like after the Carolina game, it was just constant Shedeur headlines. And they don't want that stuff. Clearly, they want the season to be how they want it to be. They want to control the narrative. They want it to be about, hey, telling the team we brought back Flacco because we think he can give us a chance to win, even though we're eyeing a quarterback at 26. We don't believe we have a long-term quarterback, right? And you traded away Travis Hunter to go not only, and I like Mason Graham. I think Mason Graham would be great, He's still a blue chip guy in that draft. But the main part of that trade was getting that 2026 draft pick. Because now you have 2 in next year's draft with all the quarterbacks who you went out and scouted again this weekend. Your actions are speaking louder than your words, but your words are also indicating that this is what you want to do. And so I'm going to get to some other past examples of when Haslam wants something done, he makes it happen. Shout out to Wally. What's up, Wally? Good to see you, brother. What's going on? What's up? Mr. 3000, I believe that was his 4th start, though, but that was his first time against a top team. Yeah, that was his first game as the guy. Like, he's the guy this year. Texas riding on his shoulders. That's the biggest game he's ever played in his life, like against defending national champs at their place. That was his stage right there. And so that was like his first official like start. Shout out to Humble with the $20 in the Cash App. Shout out to you, Humble. Love you, brother. Where's the applause at? Said happy birthday, brother. Much love. Appreciate all you do for Browns fans. Dog pound for life. Thank you, Humble. Love you too, brother. And thank you for the happy birthday wishes. I really appreciate that. I had a great day yesterday. Celebrate my birthday. And thank you, Mr. 3000. Thank you for the happy birthday. And I had a great birthday. Yeah. So it was great time. Had a great weekend. Shout out to our man Corey, who comes on the show, our Falcons fan. You guys see his reactions. Shout out to him and Paige. They got married over the weekend, so congratulations to them. It was an awesome wedding. We had a great night. And then Sunday, I was with all the guys from the Real Media and some of our other guys that watched the show down at our buddy Dan's house. Did our fantasy draft for the year, the Fred Martin annual draft, and it was a great time. It's like a hangout. We had a great day. Good seeing a bunch of guys I haven't seen in a long time. So, yeah, I appreciate you, Wally. Humble, what's up, my brother? Again. I get to the last couple of comments here. I get to my next point. So I don't know if you know this, but the TV show they were on when they were kids is still airing internationally, and they still make money off that. So he still has a lot of fans internationally. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, just look at, look at even on my channel. I mean, just everywhere, wherever Shedeur is, wherever Sanders is, mainly Shedeur and Dion. I mean, just like how they say they're coming, they're pulling up. They got a big. I mean, their fan base. I don't know if I've ever seen an athlete outside of Michael Jordan. I mean, just being a part of it. I mean, because we're covering him now and kind of being a part of it. I mean, outside of Michael Jordan, I don't know if there's another athlete I've seen with that kind of fandom. I mean, even still to this day. I mean, this guy's a head coach of Colorado, and his son is who he is, so they automatically support him because that's his son. And this guy's following is huge, and he's been a superstar since he was a kid. Obviously, like you said, the TV show. We all know who Dion is. Dion's one of the most popular athletes ever. And so their following's massive. I mean, it is its own brand in itself. It's up there outside after Michael Jordan, who's I think probably still the most biggest brand in all of athletic history. I mean, he's the biggest brand. And so Air Jordan. So outside of that, I think you can make the argument Dion's right there. I mean, just look at the numbers on the internet. It's insane. I've never seen anything like it in my lifetime. And I've covered LeBron James, grew up in Cleveland, and Akron, Ohio, and all that. And LeBron's got a big following, but I don't think it's as big as. I mean, he's got a pretty big following. He's global, but this one though, this one is a little different, I think. So that market is still growing because a lot of people don't even realize he's grown up. So I would fully expect the more exposure he gets whenever he fully starts for that to explode in sales. Oh, yeah. And that's why I think, Mr. 3000, my point I made earlier, why do you keep Shedeur Sanders on your sideline, even though he's not your long-term plans? You heard what Colin Cowherd said. There's some teams that we expect to be bad this year. The Cleveland Browns are one of them. Now, do I think the Browns have a shot with Flacco to maybe be a little better than people think? Yeah, I think so. They got talent. I think offensively they're pretty a little better than I thought going into the season. I think their front seven's really good, and that the back end scares me. I think that's where they have a lot of trouble. They're a Denzel Ward injury away, knock on wood. I love Denzel, 3-3-0 guy, but he's had an injury history, unfortunately. I hope he could stay healthy this year. But if he goes down, man, you're really screwed in that back end. They're pretty thin back there. And so, and you're already out Martin Emerson too. So they're not expected to be good this year, right? But I don't think you can have the kind of season in that locker room because you're going to bring guys back next year. You just signed Myles Garrett for a long term. You would think you would re-sign Njoku possibly because you're going to run a lot more 2 tight end sets. You got him and Fannin now. I think both of them out there together could be really dangerous. You got a lot of guys. You got to keep a culture. You got to keep that locker room afloat. That's why you bring in Flacco, especially after the season you had last year was abysmal. I mean, that was demoralizing, that locker room. And so you brought back Flacco, excuse me, because that locker room loves Flacco. He commanded the respect in that locker room when he went in there. You go listen to Stump Mitchell, who I think will be live tonight on Stump Talk Podcast. Highly recommend watching that. Running back university. Stump Mitchell was the running back coach in Cleveland from, I think, for a long time, for many years, up until 2023 when they fired everybody and brought in Ken Dorsey and all that for the Deshaun year for last season. And so, but Stump brought it up. I mean, he was there in the building. He said, there was a different vibe with Joe Flacco. He just had a different. Guys love working with Flacco. There's different. It was just different. And that's why I think they brought him back, because it brings some stability in that locker room. It brings up the morale, which they needed after that season last year. Your culture, everything you got to try to hold on to, and you're trying to still build and make something. You have to have a culture to be successful, I think. And so, but why do you keep Shedeur on the sideline still? Because you're probably not going to be good anymore in the middle of the season. You're probably already out of the playoffs. Dylan Gabriel, you would think to put him out there, but I think Dylan's probably gonna be their long-term backup. I think that's how they viewed him. I think he's an upgrade to DTR, and I think he's definitely an upgrade from DTR. That's why they drafted DTR when they took him. They thought, okay, we think this guy could be a backup, right? And so, but I think you put Shedeur out there at the end of the year. Guess what happens? You get some TV games flex. You got the Titans scheduled at the end of the year with the number 1 pick in Cam Ward. Obviously, we know their relationship, right? A lot of people thought those were the top 2 quarterbacks in the draft last year. To some people's eyes, a lot of people thought that. And so why not flex that game on Thursday night? Titans and Browns. Shedeur's first start against Cam Ward. It gets TV revenue. It's all about revenue to me. That's all that Shedeur's here in Cleveland for. I don't think he's not the long-term solution. And so, but if I'm Shedeur, though, he doesn't have any leverage this year in terms of if he wanted to move on. He doesn't have any leverage. He's a 5th-round pick, and there's nothing he can really do about it. For him, it's kind of like it sucks. I'm sure he wants to play, but it's also an opportunity, I think, for him, though, to, like the guy said today on Gil's Arena, the former player, to sit back this year, learn, observe, right? Become a better quarterback, learn the NFL game, right? And just develop, because now next year when you get your opportunity somewhere else, then you can flourish, right? And so Pat Mahomes sat for a year. Lamar didn't start right away, right? Brett Favre, I think if there's any trajectory he's on right now, if he's going to be a great quarterback in the NFL one day, Brett Favre got drafted by the Atlanta Falcons. When he was in Atlanta that first year, it was brutal. I mean, Brett Favre said that the coach, I think it was the coach, I think the head coach told him when he got there, he said something like, "Hey, Mississippi, like sits up to me." He pretty much told him we took the wrong guy from Mississippi. Like basically telling him we didn't really want you. And he ended up getting out of there and going to Green Bay, and then he became Brett Favre, right? But so that's kind of what it reminds me of what he could become from that standpoint. Like I said, I'm sorry I'm doing text speed. Oh, you're good, brother. Look at long as he's an average starter in the league, someone will make him a franchise quarterback and build around him just based off of financial considerations is worth half the team. I do think he has a lot to learn. Yeah, and I think if I'm Shedeur, take this year as an opportunity. Don't need to. I get it, you want to play, but they're probably you're not in their long-term plans. But you could sit behind Joe Flacco, who's a great veteran quarterback, Super Bowl quarterback, been in the league a long time. Him and Joe have a great relationship. Just sit and learn the NFL game and the style, and take this as motivation moving forward wherever you go to your next stop. Whether it's, I don't know, maybe the Rams or the Saints, wherever. I'm just throwing out teams. I think the Rams, though, could be something down the road. But that's all I would, say to that. But going back to my main point, though, today, Bill, about Jimmy Haslam, then I'll wrap up with this stuff. When Jimmy Haslam, again, we heard earlier, they've been telling you what they're going to do, right? The Arch Manning stuff is real. That's not a joke. We know the connections with Jimmy Sexton, who's also Kevin's agent, Bill Parcells, and obviously Bob Quinn, who works in the front office here in Cleveland. It's a whole giant connection here in Cleveland. But Jimmy Haslam, when he gets his mind set on something, again, his actions are telling you what he wants. Yeah, they won't look at the other quarterbacks on Saturday, but he when you hear the reports and he shows up at the game and standing on the sideline, he wants Jimmy Haslam. Jimmy Haslam wants Arch Manning probably first because of the connections with the Manning family, right? And actually, I got one more piece on this to solidify what I think, how they view Shedeur. You guys remember what Albert Breer said, right? Remember what Albert Breer said on his show? You see that guy standing to the left of Andrew Berry with the red shirt on, smiling? That's Albert Breer. Remember what Albert Breer said on his show when he went to Browns training camp? Was it a month ago? What I said at the time, that wasn't Albert's opinion. That's Albert was telling you what the Browns think of Shedeur Sanders. And it says in the title, it says Shedeur has a long way to go. Okay, this wasn't Albert's opinion. This is Albert's telling you what they said, and he's standing next to him down at the Horseshoe on Saturday. Here's the report again that Albert said after the Browns training camp a month ago.
The quarterback situation is not even. It is an open competition still, but it's pretty clear the way that this thing is trending. All four quarterbacks still alive. Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco worked with the first team. They also worked with the second team, but those guys got the bulk of the first team work. Dylan Gabriel got some first team spots. And then Shedeur Sanders was mostly with the backup. So what do we take from that? Well, clearly the two veteran players are ahead. Pickett went down the other day. He should be out about a week. That's going to increase the opportunity for Dylan Gabriel to work with the first team. I still think the likelihood is one of the two veteran players starts. Joe Flacco is very steady and could bring a veteran presence to the offense. Kenny Pickett would add a little bit of a run element. They do believe that at some point Dylan Gabriel is going to be ready to play. Like they'll feel comfortable putting him out there in a game. He's trending in that direction. Shedeur Sanders still has a ways to go. He was pretty far behind the other guys at the beginning of OTAs. He's closed the gap some, but not nearly enough. So right now, the likelihood is a veteran starts. We could see Dylan Gabriel at some point later in the year.
Again, that's not his opinion. That's him telling you what their opinion is. And again, look who's standing next to them on the sideline. Albert Breer standing right next to them on the sideline at the game. And so, again, they're telling you what they're doing. And just like when they say they're Dylan Gabriel is going to get some more first-team reps and all, they're treating Dylan Gabriel like a long-term backup. That's exactly what he's going to be. He's their long-term backup, and I think he'll be a good one. I don't think he's a bad long-term backup. I think that's what he is. He's not going to be a franchise starting quarterback, I don't think. But Shedeur, though, he's just sitting in the back. He's over to throwing an equipment guy. I mean, think about it. They got him throwing equipment guys at one point. Does that sound like a guy they're interested in? The front office and even the owner? No, the owner just, hey, let's just sit him, put him out there, collect some money off him, put him out there at the end of the year if need be, get some revenue money off TV and all that, flex some games, right? And we'll move off of him. But we're going out all year and we're scouting quarterbacks. That's what we're doing. That's because we're all about the 2026 draft. We traded Travis Hunter on draft night to get that first rounder. We're locked in on that. And the guy I really want, I'm speaking if I'm Jimmy Haslam, the guy I really want is Arch Manning because I know the Mannings really well and yada, yada. And so, again, when Jimmy Haslam wants something done, he makes it happen. And this happened before. This has happened many times. This happened back in 2022. 2022, excuse me. When the Browns went out and got Deshaun Watson with all the allegations, right? They went out and traded 3 first-round picks and paid $230 million fully guaranteed to get the guy here because Haslam had to have him. He was determined to get that guy here no matter what, just like he's determined to get Arch Manning here. And he's doing the exact same thing right now. I remember in the middle of that whole week when Deshaun got cleared legally and teams started going out there and putting on a case to, hey, come to our team. And we're meeting. It was the Carolina Panthers, New Orleans Saints, I think the Falcons, and the Browns. Those are the 4 teams that week. It was a whole week of that crap. And it was going on and on. And by Tuesday night, I think it was, he had told the Browns that, hey, I'm not interested. It came out that the Browns were off the table, right? But Jimmy, to Deshaun's credit, his agent, they knew the Browns really wanted him, and they knew that Jimmy was probably willing to pay more than anything because when Jimmy gets locked in on something, when he wants something to happen, damn it, he's going to make it happen. And they use it as leverage, and they got all the guarantee money in the end. So great job by him and his agent. But, I mean, they've talk about a heist. They went in there and got the money and That's it. That's all she wrote. That's all we've seen since. So, because outside of here in Cleveland, there wasn't much his play on the field. There wasn't much to talk about. But yeah, I mean that's what it was. And so they told you that even when they had Baker Mayfield that they were going to do that. Baker Mayfield was a guy who came out his rookie year, played pretty well. It gave the city a lot of hope, and after a long time of not having a guy like that ever in my lifetime, where it looked like, man, we might have a franchise quarterback here, right? They went out and got Odell Beckham Jr., made that happen because he wanted it done, and had a bad season in 19. That came back in 2020, made the playoffs, made all the way to the division round. Should have won that game against the Chiefs. When Chad Henne came in, we blew it and gave it away. But Baker didn't really he bounced back in his third season. It looked like a guy that you could definitely work with and move forward, right? And you see what Baker is now in Tampa. He's a franchise guy. You could pay him. You can work with Baker. He did well. You put him in the right structure, right? Develop him, work with him and develop him like a franchise and treat him like a franchise guy that you're invested in. Look what he became once he found stability in Tampa Bay. But the Browns were not invested in Baker all along. And they told you that. And it was written in an article by Tony Grossi. This was back in 2021, I believe. And I played this on the show before. Showed this on the show before, excuse me. And so here we go right here. This was from Tony Grossi. This was back in 2021, I believe. Or 2022, right around that time. It says, quote, Paul DePodesta is pretty much convinced owner Jimmy Haslam the only way to build a Super Bowl team is by consistently throwing for explosive plays in the passing game. Apparently, no matter the weather conditions. Stefanski and offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt will insist that their system is rooted in the run game, but that is true only to the extent that the Browns desire an effective running game, essentially to set up a play-action passing game. Eventually, they want those play-action passes to be more frequently laden with deep shots downfield, and that is where Deshaun Watson comes in. The bottom line is Stefanski's job is safe because he is completely adhering to DePodesta's advanced statistics or analytics models and not resisting them. Disagreeing with or rejecting DePodesta's research would be Stefanski's quickest ticket out of town. He is smart enough to know that. And I showed on this show how this whole thing was proven true. And their whole action showed it right after that. And he mentions there Paul DePodesta. And I've been going off about Paul DePodesta with the Browns for years, how his influence is too great in that organization. And, I said this a couple weeks ago. I had people say, whoa, he wanted to hire Sean McDermott. Man, imagine we had Sean McDermott right now as our head coach. Those people in your chat, just because the guy wanted Sean McDermott, that means he's a football saint, that we should listen to him. And he was right. Right. And that was written in an article by Jason Lloyd back in 2020 at that time. It says Paul DePodesta was right when the Browns weren't listening. They are now. And it mentioned right here how when they hired Freddie Kitchens, he wanted, it says right here, according to Jason Lloyd, take his insight for it. DePodesta wanted Stefanski last year, but was overruled when John Dorsey hired Kitchens. He wanted Sean McDermott in 2016, right? And so he wanted McDermott and he wanted Stefanski. I think Paul DePodesta, when it comes to hiring people, because when you're hiring a football coach, you're not just hiring what he could do on the field. You're hiring the person, right? There's a lot that goes into that. Background research, right? A lot of things that go into that. I think DePodesta, in a lot of ways, could actually benefit an organization when it comes to that, with research, background checks, hiring somebody. This is a professional setting, right? I think he can help with that. Where I think DePodesta has gotten way out over his skis, and where his influence now, where they're listening to him too much, was allowing him to make football decisions. He's not to me, he should be the final say or have the heaviest influence on football decisions. You want to use a guy for hiring people in your organization that can be successful, could fit into what you want, your culture, blah, blah, blah. I have no problem with that. But when you use a guy like him to make football decisions on the field, and he's basically influencing the head coach, now we got a problem. And that's exactly what's gone on. And his decisions in the football field, or in the football, what they do on the football field, he has a heavy influence on that, probably more than anybody, I think, in the organization in the last 5 years, 5-6 years. And he's been the longest, since he's gotten here in 2016, he's outlasted everybody, every coach, every GM, executive, player. He's outlasted them all. And so that article right there, or that what you see right there on the screen, that was proven true. And Jimmy Haslam became determined to make that possible. And it came out in another, speaking of Tennessee, right? You hear all this Arch Manning stuff because of his connection with Tennessee and the Manning family, how close he is to them. Well, guess what else came out at that time? You see what it says there from Tony Grossi at that time. This is when they had Baker. Let's get rid of Baker. Go get Deshaun Watson, like it says there. That's what because Deshaun can make more. He's better in a more high passing offense. You know, he can throw the ball down the field and, you know, play this explosive offense that they wanted. That they felt that's the only way you can win a Super Bowl, right? What also came out at that time too, if I can find it, that the Browns. I think right here. This was after Deshaun's first season, right around that time when Tony Grossi's article came out. Says right here, they were going to retain Kevin Stefanski, and it goes along with what he just said there. It says right here, quote, and I'll zoom in on that so you guys can see it a little bit better. There could well be coaching staff changes this offseason for the Browns, and there could be some tweaks to the offensive philosophy as well. Team owner Jimmy Haslam is a University of Tennessee alumnus who has closely watched the air raid offense the Volunteers have installed to great success in the SEC. So what do we see there? A couple things. Number one, we see the article we just saw from Tony Grossi. That got basically same thing here. The air raid offense that I've mentioned on the show for a year now when I've talked about this stuff, what happened in the past, why the Browns are so dysfunctional. Again, you see there the air raid offense. But also, what else do you see there? Oh, the Tennessee Volunteer influence, because he's closely monitoring them, right? And we know who's Mr. Tennessee, who's the Mannings. They're heavy in Tennessee. His connection with the Mannings is through Tennessee. He's a University of Tennessee guy, one of the big alum. The damn scoreboard in the Brown Stadium is structured in the state of Tennessee in its shape, and so again, he got in his ear that you have to have this air raid offense. He was convinced by it. He wanted it. He was going to be determined to make it happen. And you know what it said there in the beginning? There could be coaching staff changes this offseason. Well, it didn't happen that offseason. And guess what happened that year? After this was at the end of 22, right? That following season in 23, the Browns made the playoffs with 4 different quarterbacks, I think it was, and lost to the Houston Texans in the first round, right? With 4 different quarterbacks, they made the playoffs that year. And with, I think, their 4th string left tackle, and they still fired the offensive staff. Think of that. You made the playoffs with 4 or 5 different starting quarterbacks, and you still made the playoffs, and you were on your 4th string left tackle, and you still fired Alex Van Pelt, the offensive coordinator. You fired Stump Mitchell, and you let Bill Callahan go out the door. And I get Bill Callahan wanted to go coach with his son in Tennessee. And people want, well, what about his son? He wanted to go coach with him in Tennessee. No, he didn't. Yeah, I mean, let me rephrase that. He did. However, he was under contract. And Stump Mitchell said this on his show too. You don't let that guy out of his contract to leave. That's not a guy you just let walk out the door. One of the greatest offensive line coaches and developers of all time. And a lot of your great success the first 3 years up to that point was in the running game, and he was the running game coordinator. And you just let him walk out the door. And like I said, when I did my video last year to San Diego Browns that a lot of people watch, one of my most popular videos, they let him out the door because he didn't want to go along with their shit. That's why. You know, and just like they didn't listen to him in 2020. They trusted the analytics in 2020. Again, I don't mind if this guy wants to help with background checks and hiring people and all that stuff, but his influence on the football field, I don't give a shit if he wanted to hire Kevin Stefanski and Sean McDermott once upon a time. That doesn't give him a right to have influence over what goes on the football field and play, and even personnel decisions. What does this guy know about? He could bring statistics and analytics to some of the evaluation of a player, but he's not the end all be all in an evaluation of a player. Again, you want to bring up Sean McDermott. People might comment about, well, he wanted Sean McDermott, talking about Paulie Podesta. Well, what about when Bill Callahan wanted Tristan Wirfs and we took Jedrick Wills? And he was the first guy out there after we took Jedrick Wills. Paulie Podesta was the first guy out there that night. We took Jed Wills and said he was the guy we wanted all along. But Stump Mitchell, who was in the building on the coaching staff, probably knows more than any of us. Had a pretty good relationship with Bill Callahan. They probably talked a lot about it. They're probably right next to each other in the cubbies in the office. Bill Callahan's number one guy is Tristan Wirfs, who is an All-Pro right now. As a rookie, helped the Bucs win a Super Bowl, and probably on his way to be a Hall of Famer one day if he keeps this up. Jed Wills unsigned. He's out in the streets right now. Not even in the NFL right now. So again, but when Jimmy Haslam gets sold on something in his head, the bigger picture today, I'm not going to go down the side rant Paulie Podesta again. Again, I'm not going to keep arguing with people about that. It's proven. I got plenty. I've done many videos on it. You got to be very naive and just want to be the smartest person in the room, or just want to argue if you don't think his influence on the football field with the Browns isn't heavy. It is. And so, and they'll get followed up again right here. So again, when Jimmy wanted something to happen, he made sure it happened no matter what. So remember, they made the playoffs in 2023 with 4 or 5 different quarterbacks starting that year. I think it was 4. Yeah, it was Deshaun, Joe Flacco, PJ Walker, and DTR. Those were the 4. And your 4th string left tackle, you still made the playoffs, and you fired the offensive staff. If anything, they should have got a freaking raise for what they did that year. That's incredible. They made the playoffs that year with all that happening. But you fired the staff. Why is that? Because you said back in 2021, you said back in 2022, we were determined to make sure we got this air raid offense installed. And that's why we went out and paid Deshaun Watson $234 million with all the allegations, right? He told us no initially. We said, no, we're going to trade those 3 first-round picks. Right, we're going to pay him $235 million fully guaranteed. We're going to do whatever it takes to get him. And then they brought him here. And we're going to throw the ball more down the field because that's what Tennessee does in college. And they followed up on it. Albert Breer, the guy who was standing next to him on the sideline Saturday, guess what he said at the time after they fired Van Pelt? Remember this clip?
Because ownership and Paul DePodesta, not Kevin Stefanski, ownership and Paul DePodesta were frustrated with the progress Deshaun Watson had made. I don't think that they really, truly, the people who made that decision really, truly knew his value to that staff. And other people on that staff, not so much Kevin, but people below him, were floored when they fired him for 2 reasons. Number one, how do you fire the offensive coordinator after you just won 11 games with 4 different quarterbacks, with your 4th and 5th tackles, without Nick Chubb,
including at least 2 or 3 of those guys that nobody's ever heard of, right? I mean, you're talking about Jeff Driscoll, PJ Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Like, those are some of the guys he was working with.
So you just went through that, right? I mean, so how often do you see teams survive losing 1 tackle, let alone 3? They lost their first 3 tackles for the year.
Yeah, usually don't. I mean, look at the New England Patriots this year. You really had no tackles.
There's no tackle depth. There's no tackle depth across the league, period.
Yeah.
And he was able to help build an offense that was able to sustain with Joe Flacco coming off the couch, with their 4th and 5th tackles, without Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt coming back in. So there's that. Like, that I think is one reason why people there were floored that he got fired. The other one I think is the real key, though. He was the glue of that staff. Kevin, if you know him, he's a great guy. He's not the most outgoing guy. You know, he's just sort of like his personality is very dry. He's got a good sense of humor, but he's not like this outwardly gregarious guy. Alex was the one that held that staff together. When guys were coming out, when guys were going in, he is a guy who was a unifying force in that building. And after the year, the Patriots just came.
And so again, going back to my whole point today, when Haslam wants something to happen, he made it happen. No matter, and I totally forgot the other part. Yeah, Nick Chubb was out that whole year too. So damn that they made the playoffs. Damn if they have been successful. They had 2 playoff trips in the system that Stefanski brought in with the Van Pelt and Bill Callahan. And he made 2 playoff appearances. The last one was really impressive with a guy off the couch and 3 other starting quarterbacks that year. Your 4th string left tackle, no Nick Chubb, your best offensive weapon out for the year. Nah, we're still firing because I want this plan to work. I want this air raid offense to work. And they brought in they installed Ken Dorsey and brought in an offensive line coach that wasn't even coaching the O-lineman by the end of the year. You had Mike Vrabel, defensive guy, coach your offensive lineman by the end of last season. That's a disaster it was. And then you brought a new running back coach, who I like. But doesn't mean you still should have fired Stump. You had no reason to fire Stump. His running backs were really good all the time he was here, especially when they got good personnel in there with Chubb, Hunt, and even Ford that year, 23. I thought played decent when they needed him too. But no, we're going to fire them, and we're going to install our guys to promote and install our crap that we want, the air raid offense. And it was an absolute disaster, and it blew up in their face. And it all started back when this happened, when this article came out from Tony Grossi back in, I think it was 21 or 22. And that's like, just like you said there, that's where Deshaun Watson comes in. And because we want this explosive plays in the passing game, apparently no matter the weather conditions. Because this is what happens when you let a guy who's fully analytical try to run your football franchise. Yes, he can help with certain personnel, with certain executive hirings, maybe with background checks, and help you with the cap, especially with all the numbers and all that. I'm not saying he doesn't have a role, but his influence in Cleveland, it's undeniable, his influence. He's basically the president of football operations, right? And so, pretty much, let's just call it like it is. And so, and it's been an absolute disaster. So, it's funny. I look at that article now that Jason Lloyd wrote, and respect to Jason Lloyd, but I'm thinking, I think they listen to him too much now, Jason. I mean, yeah, maybe at that time they should listen to him for certain things, but the way they're listening to him now, his control now is an absolute disaster. It ain't working. And so, however, though, I think that Haslam could be shifting to somewhere else, though, away from Paulie Podesta. And he's tried this before. And oh, by the way, he's connected to the Mannings. Matter of fact, he is a Manning. Remember this? Back in, well, you may not remember. Some of you may not know this at all. Back in 2017, when the Browns hired John Dorsey as their GM, not president of football, as their GM, right? Yeah. Let me try. I got it on deck here. Make sure I click on the right one. Right here. This is on Pro Football Talk. Right? It says right here, amid plenty of speculation that future Hall of Fame quarterback Peyton Manning could be taking over the football operations in Cleveland, Browns owner Jimmy Haslam addressed the elephant in the room during the press conference introduction. John Dorsey, it's the team's new GM, asked about Manning's potential rival. Haslam said, quote, if I say we had dinner Monday night, would it cause a ripple, end quote. Then Haslam said that he and Peyton indeed had dinner on Monday night. Peyton and I talk all the time, he said. So again, the relationship, you can see right there, he just told you they know how close he is. They talk all the time. Him and the Mannings. Haslam added, explaining that the majority of the time they discuss Tennessee football. Haslam said that Peyton isn't sure what he wants to do in his future. And right here, I'm even going to highlight it. And Haslam didn't close the door on Peyton eventually joining the Browns. If it ever happens, Peyton presumably will want equity in the franchise. If not, he'll wait for an opportunity with another franchise that offers him a piece of ownership in exchange for essentially behaving like the owner of the franchise. Interesting. And so, it reminds you, at that time, guess who was also in the building at that time? Paulie Podesta. And even with Paulie Podesta in the building at that time, and you just hired John Dorsey, you were still thinking about hiring Peyton Manning as your president of football operations. That means he's in charge of everything. After you, as the owner, it's Peyton who's in charge. That's the pecking order. And then the GM and the coach. So they didn't close the door on it. At that time, they didn't know what Peyton wanted. Peyton eventually obviously went on to do the Manning cast, right? And that's been successful for him and Eli. But you think Peyton wants to sit there and call Monday Night Football games forever? I don't think he does. You think he wants to sit there week 8 and week 15 calling, freaking New Orleans versus at the Giants? No, he doesn't. That's what he'll just be doing that on the couch, might as well, just be sleeping on the couch. And so, why not run it back now with your nephew possibly involved? And the owner has got the additional first round pick, and made it very clear that that's what he wants to happen. Right? And then you remember last year, I think it was on the Ken and Lima on the morning show, 92.3 here in Cleveland. You can Google it, and I'll try to find it real quick. I should have had this on. I just thought of this, popped in my head. Remember, Lyman went out there and said that it was becoming pretty clear and evident to him that Paulie Podesta was getting phased out of the organization. Well, I just showed you his influence and how much that's grown in the last 5 years since 2020, and what the result of that's been. It's actually overall been an absolute disaster, and they're in a worse place now than when they took over in 2020, in my opinion. But it's been a disaster. Their whole plan was Deshaun Watson the air raid, and it blew up in their face, and it failed, right? But why would you start to phase him out now? I'm putting on a tinfoil hat here. I'll say it. I'm putting on a tinfoil hat, damn it. I don't give a shit. I'm just telling you, when he's sitting there on the sideline watching Arch Manning, you hear the reports nationally and locally that the thirst he has, he'll do whatever it takes to get Arch Manning. He goes out and gets the additional first-round pick. Right? They took 2 quarterbacks, don't matter, right? And then you saw the past history of when he wanted something to happen, no matter the results, even though they made the playoffs with 4 different quarterbacks, even though Baker played well and you could have signed him and he went on to be a franchise guy regardless, you still went through with your plan no matter what. You'll do whatever it takes. And just like Tony Rizzo said in that clip, he's going to do whatever it takes to make it happen, to get Arch Manning. Why wouldn't that be the case now? And why wouldn't you bring Peyton Manning now? If you're trying to phase out Paulie Podesta, and I'm going to find that. Let me Google that real quick. Why wouldn't you just, if you're phasing out Paulie Podesta, allegedly, wouldn't that mean you're bringing in somebody else as your president of football operations who you never actually officially hired in that, nobody in that title? Possibly. I mean, you kind of connect all the dots here. And again, their actions are speaking louder than they're telling you what their words, but their actions are telling you what they're going to do. That they're going to get Arch Manning no matter what. And a lot of people say, and I get it, he didn't look great Saturday, and a lot of people are saying that's crazy. This guy looked horrible. Yeah, I got it right here. This was from Ken and Lima. I think there's a clip of it. I hope, please. Yes, right here. Thank gosh, I found it. This was November 7th of 2024. Shout out to Ken and Lima. They got a pretty always high energy show in the morning when everybody's waking up, and enjoy listening to them when I get a chance. But here's what he said again. This was back November 7th, 2024, and of last season. Here's what he said.
Paul Podesta is either on his way out of the organization or just in a completely different role that is going to have nothing to do with actual draft picks or any of that.
What role would he have then? That's why
help them out business wise. When they talk about him as a very smart business guy, I mean that's not coded language. That's flat out. He's gonna help us make money, and the Browns are obviously coming up to do that.
Isn't his
with
job,
a new dome.
His job is wait a minute.
Wait, mixed-use center around.
That's what Dave Jenkins does. Dave Jenkins is a good businessman. That's not.
Hey, can never have too many of them.
They made a whole movie about Paulie Podesta. Yeah. Paulie Podesta didn't do anything about hey, let's get a new stadium here in Oakland. No, it was all about baseball players. He's supposed to be a sports guy, sports analytics guy. And I feel when you say that, it's okay, I can't yell at Podesta now.
You can yell at him because the damage has already been done. I just don't think he's going to have anything to do with the Browns and their big time decision making for the next quarterback, the drafts. I think you're going to see more and more. I think over the next few months, you're gonna find out exactly what I'm talking about. I'll just leave it at that. But you can get mad at him.
Leave it at that.
Yeah, you can.
Do you know something I don't know?
It sounds like you know something.
Yeah, what do you know?
I think it's pretty clear that he's being phased out anyway in all of this. So yeah, get mad at him. But I'm focused on
You're damn right.
the guys that I think are going to have something to do with this turnaround, or their exits are going to lead to something to do with the turnaround, and that is Barry and Stefanski.
Now, pay attention to what he said there. He said business, right? They're going to phase Paulie Podesta out. He said, and Lyman said, what the hell would be, or Ken said, what the hell would be his role then? Business. Guess who was sitting there on the draft next to Andrew Berry and right by Jimmy Haslam, right at that front table there where they all sit in the war room, in the draft war room. Guess who was sitting there to the left of Andrew Berry every night? Paulie Podesta, right? He said business. I brought up today, why would you take Shedeur Sanders when you took Dylan Gabriel? And you know what you really want in the next year's draft. And by the way, night one, you traded away Travis Hunter, his former teammate, to go get a first-round pick for next year's draft, right? Why would you do that? Right? Why would you still take Shedeur Sanders? Well, he's already generated almost $300 million in revenue, business. Paulie Podesta, he's right. And I think they are probably phasing him out a little bit. And because I'll be honest with you, their draft, this past draft, you look at their draft from top to bottom in terms of just quality players, it's better so far. And we still got to play the season. But through what I saw in the preseason from Carson Schweisinger, Harold Fannin, Dylan Sampson, all these guys, if Quinn Schamann gets back, their draft, I think, it actually ended up being probably their best draft here in this tenure with this regime since 2020. Could that be a coincidence? Because maybe he was still sitting there draft night, but if he's getting phased out in some of the decision making with some of a lot of the stuff in terms of what the team's going to look like, football, personnel, all that, it kind of makes sense to me why they may have had their best draft this draft. So I'm just going to keep. I mean, honestly. So, but that last selection with Shedeur was business, right? But who could you be replacing with him? Why are you phasing him out all of a sudden? What's coming down the road, right? And I think, like I said, he tried it in 2017. He's down on the sideline at his nephew's game. He'll do whatever it takes to get him here. And when he wants something to happen, damn it, he'll make it happen. And again, why not? I think my man Hummel put it in the thing there, right here. Why not make it happen this time? Why not hire Peyton as the president of football now? When he can be the president of football for his nephew. They all got a connection with Kevin Stefanski through Jimmy Sexton, that's Kevin's agent, and that's all their guy. They're all in the same circle. There's people in the front office. They're all connected, right? Bob Quinn, I pointed it out. Why not? It says right here, he didn't close the door on Peyton eventually joining the Browns. So why not? Why not now? Again, and this is my whole point today. Shedeur Sanders, that's his whole purpose here in Cleveland. It's just revenue. And for him, it's, it sucks for him because the kid probably wants to play, obviously, right? And, he wants to play. And I feel for the kid because he's going to have to sit all year now. And he's not in their long-term plan. If he was in their long-term plans, you would have took Travis Hunter night one. Just like when the Bengals took when the Bengals took Jamar Chase for Joe Burrow, because Joe Burrow was their guy, his former teammate. When they had some other holes in that, where they could have took a tackle, could have took a line, right? No, we're taking his guy because that makes sense for him. And then you don't put him out there with the last 2 minutes of that final preseason game. You put Tyler Huntley in there, who you knew you were going to cut the next day. Why wouldn't you give the guy who, if you were actually investing him in the long term, why wouldn't you give him that opportunity to go out there and get in 2 minute drive and see what he can do? It's good experience because he's not really your long term guy. And so, again, their long term guy is the guy who they want as their long term guy. Doesn't mean he'll actually be, and he didn't look well. He didn't play well Saturday, but I think he can be better, and I think he will be better. But the guy they really want, they were down on the sideline Saturday, the week before their first game. Scoping them out. So it's all adding up. It's pretty obvious. They're telling you what they're going to do and what their plans are. I'm just up here telling you guys what they're telling you and just kind of displaying it. That's what their goal is. So he said, well, you Browns reporters suck. Well, number one, I'm not a Browns reporter. So if you're talking about the Browns reporters, you think they suck, then there's some I don't like. Mark Moses, but I'm not a Browns reporter. Thank you very much. The Cincinnati Bengals are the king of Ohio. Sure. The funny part is that if they plan on not playing him or think he's not any good, my question is why won't they put him on the practice squad? It boggles me. Because that would start a riot in Cleveland. That the media. That people would go nuts. They put him on the practice. He shouldn't be on the practice squad. He won't be on the practice squad ever. He's only there for the reasons I pointed out today, Chantel. He's not going to. He's never going to put on the practice squad. He's an insurance policy for financially off the field. He's already generated probably over $300 million. And at the end of the season, when they're already out of the playoffs and the season's down the waist, you put him out there. It draws interest, get some TV gains, flex, more revenue. That's all it's about. And we're still got our pick for Arch Manning next year. We still got Arsenal to go target Arch, or maybe they like somebody else down the road that changes their mind. Who knows? They did go scout Nussmeier, Klubnik, and I think they went and scouted Sellers too. I'm sure they'll probably scout Drew Aller as well, the local kid. So at Penn State. So that's all it is to me. We'll catch up some of these comments here. Shout out to Selmo. He's good to see you again. He said Manning will do a better job. I think he would than what we've had here, personally. The Browns and Buckeyes got Ohio on lock. Yes, they sure do. Manning being an owner would raise the value of the team. Yeah. I mean, Peyton Manning being out of here would be insane. That'd be nuts. Manning's, LeBron, Ball family, Larry Nance Jr., the Sanders family, the stars are all lining, Joe. Humble says about 2026. I'll tell you what, though, I don't think the Sanders family would still be here. I think if after this season, I think he'll be out of Cleveland, which I think will be good for him because he can go somewhere where he can actually have a chance to, where he could have the chance to be somebody's guy, right? Maybe even the Rams. I don't know. Matthew Stafford's getting old. Why not go there? I think he'd fit well out there with his brand and stuff out there in Hollywood. But we'll see. But I don't think he will be here after this season unless he could change their minds. I wouldn't. I mean, I give him a shot. I mean, I think he could, but I don't think. No matter what he does, they're going through with their plan because Haslam's already got his mind set. I mean, that's why you're out there in the sideline of a game, week 1 or before week 1 of your team's first regular season game against Cincinnati. You're down at the sideline scouting the kid. So now let's go grab Caleb. Drop a like. Kevin Love, bring him back. We'll just run it full circle. Screw it. Let's see. Cincinnati, brother, tell your O-line to block for your QB. Yeah, they better block. My gosh. They better block for him. They better play some defense, too. We need a head start. We need a head smart guy like Peyton. We haven't had a guy like that, passionate about the game since arguably Belichick. I think he would do really well, personally, as an executive. Humble, I think he would do really well. I think he would flourish in that role. I think he can, the way he just talks about the game, his knowledge of the game, I think he would be a really good talent evaluator. I think a lot of the reasons why he went to the Broncos at that time when he finished his career, not only because the game had shot to win that Super Bowl that he won, but he also got to sit under and kind of probably watch John Elway work. John Elway was another all-time great quarterback who went into that role for a franchise and has been successful at it. I think that was a lot of it too. I'm sure Peyton's always had that role in mind that, hey, one day after I retire, I'd like to get into that kind of role like Elway, right? Where I have equity in a franchise, but also I'm running the show, I'm the president of the team. And so I think a lot of reasons why he was there in Denver was to kind of shadow Elway and learn from him, right? Pick his brain. He's with him every day in the building. So I like Ken and Lamb. They have a fairly balanced take, and they're pretty smart and fair. Yeah, they're pretty entertaining too. We need I already read that one. A team like the Rams would snatch him up. That's why they want Chantel. Yeah, I mean, I think the Rams would be a good fit for him personally for Shedeur. I think he could sit this year, learn the NFL game, get all the knowledge, right? Get better. I know it's going to stink for this year for him because he wants to play, but I think it'll benefit him in the long run. If it worked for Mahomes, why can't it? It could definitely work for him. You know what I mean? I think, Mahomes sat for a whole year. I think if he could sit for a year, he's got a good relationship with Flacco, and then get that opportunity somewhere else where they're actually invested into him. I think he could become that guy for the Rams. And I think Sean McVay, I like Sean McVay. I think Sean McVay can get the best out of anybody personally. I think he's a great coach. But why are they so afraid to put him on the practice squad? PR. You put him on this practice squad, that's a nightmare, PR-wise, because people would say, I mean, they're already bitching about him not getting all preseason about him not getting enough reps, and rightfully so. I mean, I thought he played well off the Carolina game where he should have got a little more reps, but it makes sense now to me why he's not getting those reps because they're not invested in him long term. He's not their guy, but they would never put him on the practice squad. I don't think and that would be stupid if they put him on the practice squad to me. Because I just he's better than that. That to me, that's another headline that you don't need. It would be major headlines. Shedeur's on the practice squad because he's a big name. It doesn't matter if he's on the practice squad or not, or a third stringer. It doesn't matter. You only have 3 quarterbacks on the roster right now. Usually you have 3 on your roster. He's your third string quarterback right now. So put him on the practice squad doesn't really mean anything to me. It actually would just make things worse. It just answered. I just answered that. It seems that interested, but they are going to give up a second and third round pick for him. That would allow the Browns to recoup the investment lost. Wait, let me read that again. Seems that they aren't. Yeah, for sure. They're definitely, but I will say, Mr. 2000, based on his past history, when he wanted something done, he made sure he made it and got with was Deshaun Watson installing the air raid offense. He made sure it got done, no matter what. It didn't matter if they made the playoffs with 4 different quarterbacks, and no Nick Chubb and all that. Didn't matter. Baker could have actually panned out here, and he made the playoffs and played well enough. Was out there playing hurt his last year. Didn't matter. We're making whatever I want done. We're making it happen, and that's what it's going to be. Shout out Matt Stafford, one of my favorites. Yeah, I took him my fantasy in the backup quarterback, humble. But one of the best ball spinners in the last since he's been in the league. Really, I think still one of the best pure ball spinners now, just pure passing wise. Not one of the better quarterbacks still, but most people think he is. I mean, Matt Stafford's the man. Believe us, they won't put him on the practice squad. But if you've been paying attention to the rumors, teams have been calling for trades about him. I'll be honest. If I were the Browns, I would trade him because I don't see what good is it leaving him as a third-string quarterback. You shouldn't just milk a kid for money, and he's not just your typical third-string quarterback. He's a big name, a big brand, a big following. He draws he's headlines on First Take on Monday morning after his preseason game. He's not your typical, this isn't Joe Schmo on the bench. So I don't see what the purpose is because all year long, when the Browns lose that game, when Flacco screws up and loses a game, or if Dylan Gabriel goes out there, doesn't look good and they lose, all hell's going to break loose. And that's just not a headline you need in your locker room, right? You're trying to build some stability this year. You're actually looking better in some spots on your team. You're filling out your roster in some spots in the trenches on both sides. You're prepping they are really prepping this team to insert a quarterback next year in the draft. That's what they're doing. You start in the trenches. You bring in running backs, right? You try to hit on some receivers, right? You brought a new linebacker in the front seven. You drafted a defensive tackle up front to help Myles Garrett. You just paid, they're building the team out. You brought another tight end and Harold Fannin. They're building this team to be at a point where they can insert a quarterback down the road in the future, right? Which would be in the draft. And so I don't see the point of keeping him on just to insert him at the end of the year for revenue and fan interest. You're doing a disservice to him. And I think you're doing a disservice to the team because it may not get to that point, right? It could get ugly. I mean, if they start losing games, in terms of just the tension and the preseason was pretty rough in itself, in the training camp with some of the headlines and the way they were getting taking blows from the media, and players see that stuff. It gets in the locker room, so they could say they don't see it. They see it, and that his coverage is as heavy as an athlete I've seen in a long time. And so, to me, if I were them, I would trade him. I would just move off of it. You got $300 million. I get Jimmy. That's all you cared. It was more about that, in my opinion. But time to move on. Like, what's the point of all this? That's why I said at the end of my film session last week after I broke down the Rams game of him. I said they need to depart from each other. It's better for Shedeur to move on. It's better for the Browns to move on, in my opinion, and just leave it at that. I don't get what we're trying to do here. To me, it doesn't make any sense. Mark said if the Browns are shooting for Arch, that tells you they're going to tank the season, and the Cowboys are doing the same thing. Are doing the same. Should be refunding the fans money for 25. Mark, that's a great point. And thanks for joining the show, Mark. Appreciate you. That's a great point because it makes me wonder, Mark, if Joe Flacco goes out there and starts to win. What if Joe Flacco miraculously was? I don't think it's going to happen. But what if they were 500 after 7 weeks, right? What if they're 4-3? What if they're 5-2 even? Are they going to start calling down and be like, hey, because Jason Lloyd mentioned this last week at the Ultra Cleveland Sports Show, as they're going to try to make it where this has happened. I mean, this happens in sports all the time. People could say it doesn't happen, but I think Jason Lloyd was the one, if I'm not mistaken. They've talked to executives before in sports franchise say, oh yeah, we were definitely trying to take. And when that team starts to get to a level, we'll start to mess with the personnel, mess with stuff to make sure it kind of goes back down to earth because we need to keep them in line to get a high draft pick. It's not a secret, right? And just like when the reports with Rizzo and Coward said it's the worst kept secret in the South that Haslam's thirst for Arch Manning. So they're going to make sure, and the whole brass was at the game Saturday, and that's the first time I've ever seen Stefanski publicly scouting a quarterback as the Browns head coach. So that tells you a lot. And that tells you that's their guy. That's probably QB1 on their board because that's who the ownership wants the most. And I think there's a lot more to that. Like I pointed out, who else they could bring with him in the organization? Maybe his uncle. I don't know. But yeah, as far as this season goes, Mark, I agree with you. They're not. I think signing Flacco was to signal to the locker room that they're interested in winning, to keep the morale up in there and to try to keep players bought in because you can lose guys really fast. But that's not their main goal. Their main goal is let's get Arch and let's get that stadium built. That's their whole goal, in my opinion. Let's see here. They should trade him. It's stupid to keep him and not play him. Yeah, I agree. I would trade him personally, Chantel. I agree with you. I truly believe Matt makes wide receivers better, and we all know it's wide receivers that make QBs. But in that case, I truly believe Matt put the ball where it needs. Well, I think Matt Stafford is one of the best arm talents we've seen in a long time. Maybe ever. I mean, he has an elite Hall of Fame arm, Hall of Fame career. He will be in the Hall of Fame. He won that championship with the Rams. To me, that solidified it. Matt Stafford's a legend. It's about the money at the end of the day. He's making them money. That's all they care about. If they didn't, they would be advertising Flacco and Dillon on the homepage of the Browns and the NFL. Yeah, and that's it, mister. You hit the nail right on the head there. That's all it's about. They're telling you actions speak louder than words. And they're telling you what they're thinking, without a doubt. And the reports have been out there for a while, and their actions are adding up to the reports. And just like how I showed the example in the past when they wanted the air raid offense, it was being reported. Their actions eventually followed that up, no matter what happened. Even though they made the playoffs, they still fired everybody and installed the whole air raid scheme with Deshaun, and it blew up in their face. But they still made it happen no matter what because they wanted it to. Shop, they didn't know. Yeah. Mike LaFleur, Mike McDaniel, Sean McVay. Your 3 favorite coaches. That's a good list. I like that list. Well, I don't like Mike McDaniel to me. Spreadsheets to me should not be on the sideline coaching a game. That's just my opinion. I don't think Mike McDaniel is just an NFL head coach. I like Mike LaFleur, or Matt LaFleur. I like Sean McVay a lot. To me, Mike McDaniel, I would fire him if I were the Dolphins. I don't think spreadsheets to me. That's what he did in San Francisco. Go look it up. He was a spreadsheets guy. He should be leading anybody on a football field, in my opinion, as head coach. He might be an offensive-minded guy, but to me, I don't know. Yeah, I'm good. Ask Jersey about Mike McDaniels next time you see him on the show. Humble, wait till you see that rant. But what if Shedeur went to the Raiders? Thoughts on that, Joe? Or backup for Jordan Love? You know, Packers are great development quarterback. Raiders could make sense, although it doesn't seem like his relationship with Tom Brady is as close as people thought. And Tom made some interesting comments for the weekend that people thought maybe he was taking a shot at Shedeur. I don't know. But I think the Rams, to me, are the best situation. I think it's the best fit on and off the field for him. And it's the easiest transition for me to me. And I think Sean McVay is great with any quarterback, in my opinion. I think he does a great job with any quarterback you give him. He'll make it happen. I think the Rams is the best fit, personally. Hell, even the Vikings, he'd be good there. I'd love with my Viking trade JJ for Sanders. I don't think the latter will ever be that good without the talent surrounding him. I just don't think he really has that good of an arm. Yeah, they're not trading McCarthy ever. Not saying ever, but he hasn't played yet. But they're not trading him right now, without a doubt. He's their guy. This is his year to show it. It's basically his rookie season. We'll see how he does. I like JJ McCarthy when he came out. I think he has a lot of talent and upside. But I think Shedeur has a lot of talent and upside too. So, but I don't think that trade would ever happen. Amazing show again, though. Excuse me. Amazing show again, Joe. I need some more. After I start talking for a while, mouth gets a little dry. But anyways, the Browns are just stupid. Let Shedeur go and be done with it. And I agree. I'm glad we both think the Rams would be a good team for him. If he was to be moved instead to the Saints, then keep saying on that. The Saints could be an option too, for sure. We'll see how it goes this year with Shuck and all that. But the Rams, to me, this make the most sense because they don't have anybody right now. And I think he would be the easiest transition. To me, that'd be the easiest transition for him is to out there. That team was worried about his personality, would overpower the coaches. That's a good point. And I think I don't think he'll ever be a Saint. I'll leave it at that. I think they wanted to go to the Saints, but I don't think the Saints are interested in him. And they took another guy over him, and that was that. So, just like the Browns took another guy over him and still took him, but they didn't take him because they believed in him. They took him for other reasons. So, Mike McDaniels, he has a rough job, though, Joe. I know, but that just look at that guy on the sideline. He ain't leading. What guy is he leading in the battle? What his floods on, his flood khakis he wears his capri khakis he wears every game. That guy ain't lead nobody. I'm sorry, I just can't do it, Humble. I can't. That's like putting Max Strus out there at the 3 and having him do a reverse layup at the end of the game, trying to go ISO. I can't do it. They had to trade Shedeur. Look at his division. Shedeur or Chantel, it's unlikely. Oh, it's about the trades and all that. Yeah, we'll see. I haven't heard any rumors about trades or Shedeur yet. I'm sure maybe a team maybe has called, maybe not. I don't know. But I'm sure teams probably, if they're interested in him, they probably know he'll be on the market next offseason. So that might be what they just say, we'll just let him sit and develop for a year and kick the cans in next offseason and get him. 70 points against the Broncos, Joe. Mike could still be a good coach. Yeah, but that's one game to me. I can't do it. He's not a guy. He ain't leading anybody a Super Bowl. I can tell you that. There's a reason why. There's a reason why he'll be on the. He's on the hot seat right now. He's just not a guy that's going to lead men on a football field. He can have a flash in the pan every now and then. I mean, there's been coaches who got fired who had games like that. Maybe not 70 points, but had big games like that. But that doesn't mean they're the long-term solution. To me, he's not I don't think he's a NFL head coach, in my opinion. You don't want. They're not very good in cold weather games too, record-wise. I don't think they're that good. Yes, it does. If you know anything about football, you know Richardson is a bust. He's at least made 3 years away from being a complete quarterback. The Rams also called. That must have been something they were talking about in the chat. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. Again, this is my take on everything. I think them being on the sideline Saturday at that game signaled a lot to me, and it kind of solidified a lot of things of what their true plans really are this year in Cleveland. It's not about Shedeur Sanders. Dylan Gabriel's their long-term backup, and that's really it. I mean, they're not they're going to go after Arch Manning no matter what. If I had to bet my money, they're going to go after Arch no matter what. And I know he didn't play well Saturday. I get it. And he may not even come out technically. But just like when Arch came out a couple weeks ago and they asked him, I guess one of his family members said that he was going to go back to school next year for after this season. He kind of shot it down and said, well, no, that's not true. I don't know where that came from or what he's talking about. They're opening the door, and it's all lining up. And again, it's not what I think they should do. They're telling you what they're going to do. And whenever they tell you what they're going to do, like I showed in the previous examples today in the past, whenever they want something to happen, they make it happen no matter what. And so just like Tony Grossi said, no matter what, they make it happen. And so that's what I think is going on. And that's my take on all this today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you took something away from today's show. That's what I think is going to happen. Oh, no, you're good, Mr. 2000. So what makes him think the 26 QB is the savior? No guarantee. It's the Browns, Chantel. They haven't found a quarter. The Browns always do the unthinkable. And because they're the Browns. And they may be right on this. The kid might turn out to be a great quarterback by the end of the year. We don't know. And I'm not going to put good or bad off of one game. Just like after Shedeur's preseason, I didn't say he was good or bad. He's a young quarterback. So we'll see what happens at the end of the season. But that's their guy, though. They're telling you that's their guy. And so that's what I think is going on. He said, happy birthday, Gabby. Appreciate it, Humble. I appreciate this live. 216 for life. That's right. 216 for life. You guys do rock. Shout out to all you guys. Shout out to the new people that tuned in today. Appreciate you guys. Hope to see you back. Hope you subscribed. Please spread the word. Like, subscribe, share all that good stuff. And I will see you guys in the next one. I'm out of here. Gone.